Ever since I was a kid, I've been a passionate reader, and that part of me has never gone away. Even during years where I didn't read as much, I still tended to read more than the average person. In 2022, I read around 80 books, and that was without trying. When I do try, as I did last year, I read 100 books plus. Now, I'm not saying this to brag, but I want to emphasize that not only do I enjoy reading, but I enjoy reading widely, especially within my chosen genre. I primarily read fantasy, with some horror and dystopia thrown in. But the reason I say I read widely in a genre is that there's a massive variety within one genre. Twilight and Mistborn are night and day next to each other, but both featuring magical elements fit under the fantasy umbrella. Also, crazy as it may seem, I've enjoyed both. You see, I'm of two minds when it comes to reading, or storytelling in general. I believe in the value of beautiful writing, rich prose, and deep themes. I've read and loved more literary authors like Charles Dickens, Oscar Wilde, Poe, and more recently, Angela Carter and George Eliot. I appreciate masterful writing. At the same time, I believe there's a place for mindless entertainment too. And while I'd never compare Twilight to Shakespeare, I do feel there was something unique about it. It's no literary masterpiece, but I remain addicted to it, and it managed to stand out against hundreds of YA competitors, despite initially coming from an unknown debut author at the time. When it comes to books, all I want to know is what to expect. If someone says something is fantasy, that doesn't tell me anything. Even a subgenre can be imperfect, because urban fantasy could describe everything from Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunters to the Dresden Files, which I can tell with a glance are trying to reach different audiences, something hype often doesn't take into account. If I'm picking up a book, I need to know if it's more like Twilight or Wheel of Time, so I can adjust my expectations accordingly. I'm not the typical reader. At least I don't think so, because there aren't many people who can enjoy Wheel of Time or Twilight at the same time. They're so different, offering completely different things, and more importantly, are written for distinct and separate audiences, which is where the problem with hype comes in, because hype fails to provide this context. I can figure out fairly quickly what a book is trying to do and who it was written for. But many people expect the best books to be written for them, and this is the danger of hype. Hype sounds like a great thing for a writer and their work, but let's break down what hype is and why it might be more harmful than good for a book. When it comes to the danger of hype, the first thing we need to discuss is the target audience. When you go on a review site like Amazon or Goodreads, you'll see a rating. Now, this is important because many people assume that a book's rating is a marker of how good it is, but that's not the case. All a rating tells you is how much the target audience enjoyed the book. Since the target audiences for Stephanie Meyer and Brandon Sanderson are generally different, the fact that stories from both authors have similar ratings is meaningless. Now, how does this tie into hype, and why is hype a bad thing? Well, the main problem with hype is that it raises more awareness around a book than it necessarily needs. In other words, the fanfare around the book has become such that those outside of the target audience are now hearing about it. And with so much noise going on, people naturally become curious. On the surface, this sounds like a good thing. No matter how popular a writer gets, most authors are eager to expand their audiences and reach as many people as they can. But this comes with drawbacks, the foremost being that the book will, intentionally or not, be marketed to people who would never have picked it up. Twilight was one such book, and readers who weren't interested in romance, teen angst, or bad boys tried it out, likely expecting the next fantasy masterpiece after so much fanfare, and understandably, they were disappointed. While I've complimented Meyer's world building before for being creative and fun, I can't compare it to the intricate design of the worlds we see in The Cosmere. I've enjoyed both writers, but like I said, I still expect different things from them, and I read according to my mood. Target audiences want different things from their books. On some level, all of us want to be swept away. We want to lose ourselves in a book and forget the outside world. But wildly entertaining and well-written aren't mutually exclusive. A book can be one without the other, and different audiences will have different standards. For many, a book can't be entertaining without also being well-written, or vice versa. The most hardcore readers won't be happy unless a book is both, with Harry Potter and The Hunger Games being examples of series that are genuinely well-written while still being commercially entertaining. Harry Potter and The Hunger Games were the rare series that veered outside their target audience, to their benefit, because they appeal to such a wide range of readers. YA readers looking for fun, magic, adventure, and straightforward romance could find it in these series. Both generated legions of fan writers and debates over who should end up with who. At the same time, serious fantasy or science readers praised these series as well. Readers of both The Cosmere and Twilight have appreciated these books, with the former audience finding in them clever plotting, powerful themes, or engaging characters. Harry Potter and Hunger Games are the exception, though, rather than the rule. It's rare for a book to be well written and have all of the sizzling commercial tropes, as writers tend to fixate on one or the other according to their own tastes, which means that many books which are hyped end up in the hands of readers who ultimately won't enjoy them, because they don't offer the elements they want or are used to. If you're someone who exclusively reads YA with their blend of forbidden romance, fated mates, and bitter but handsome men, then you might struggle with something like Wheel of Time. Not because it's a bad book, but because you aren't the target audience. Likewise, if you make a point of reading Robin Hobb, Robert Jordan, or Tolkien to the exclusion of much else, then it's likely you'll hate Twilight, unless you're a reader like me who can switch expectations as need demands. It comes down to what readers are looking for and expect. For most people, a certain level of hype is an indicator of quality, as well as a hint that a book could offer more to a broader audience. After all, we've seen this with Harry Potter and Hunger Games. When those books went beyond their target audience, those outside of the original targets were pleasantly surprised and ultimately delighted with the stories they read. In short, Harry Potter and Hunger Games didn't disappoint. Twilight, by contrast, did disappoint though, because in the end it's still very much a YA book. Unfortunately, the hype led people to assume that Twilight was just as rich as Harry Potter, leaving readers outside the target audience upset when it couldn't deliver on that implicit promise. The result was a series of parodies and no shortage of hate towards a woman who just wanted to write a book for fun. Meyer wasn't trying to compete with Rowling or Sanderson, but the hype around her series pushed her into doing so. Harry Potter had those same commercial elements, like light romance and big bads and fantasy adventure, which makes it appealing to twihards. At the same time, it has elements Twilight doesn't. Clever plot twists, morally gray characters, deep themes, and emotionally jarring events like war and death, all of which can appeal to readers of Tolkien or Sanderson. books like Shatter Me, The Red Queen, and The Cursed Prince, while popular, mostly stayed within the reach of their intended audiences, with the result being they didn't receive the kind of backlash Twilight did. This isn't to say these series don't have their detractors, but most were satisfied, and the books didn't gain traction beyond TikTok, at least not when compared with Harry Potter or Twilight, two series that became well known even without the assistance of such pervasive social media. The latest book to be hyped is Fourth Wing, and the scrabble to get the book was real. I finally had to cave and buy a hardcover special edition of the first book because paperbacks were non-existent, and my order of the second book actually went missing, though Amazon did deliver a replacement. I haven't read the books yet, but I'm hoping I enjoy them. I'm not going into them expecting Tolkien, but based on what I've read, I am expecting them to be on a level with Sarah J. Maas or Stephanie Meyer. Unfortunately, many readers have probably picked these books up expecting Harry Potter, something which I think could do more harm than good to the book in the long run. Everyone on BookTok extolled how great this book was. No matter how many videos I watched, I didn't come across a single negative review. That said, the core audience on BookTok is composed of a very specific target audience, and as the obsession spilled over, reviews started to appear in other places, mainly on BookTube and online forums, with negative reviews finally appearing. One person who commented said that as many as 50% of readers were disappointed in the book, though this claim wasn't backed by any kind of hard data. However, the book has also received an unprecedented rating on Goodreads, beating records with how high it is. Another comment noted that Fourth Wing would probably end up like Twilight, fanatically adored by one group and loathed by another. That's the price of hype. As you go beyond your target audience, you increase your chances of being reviled as well as loved, which in future considerations can skew the perception of your work. Some people who might even have liked your book could end up hating it because it becomes cool to do so, because their expectations were raised by its popularity, or because they read passionately negative reviews which plant a bias in their mind. I'm never going to say a writer shouldn't strive for fame, but in many cases it's not looked for, and it's certainly not something Stephanie Meyer was prepared for. She could never have dreamed Twilight would become as big as it was. Its popularity prompted many to read it who probably shouldn't have, and this led to hate on another level that left the writer shaken. Some have said she should have developed a thick skin, but she didn't expect to be famous. And given how nasty some comments can be, I can't say I blame her for her reaction. I can't help being concerned that Rebecca Yarros could be hit with a similar ridicule, even outright hate, just because she wanted to write a fun romance about dragons, especially as time wears on and more of the wrong readers crack open her books. This isn't to say I'd gatekeep reading, but when I say that someone shouldn't read a book, I mean that they shouldn't read something they're already primed to dislike, because to me that does a disservice to you and the author. You're placing unfair expectations on someone, as well as wasting your own time by reading something you wouldn't touch if it wasn't popular. This is to say nothing of the pettiness that can follow when you're reading something on purpose to make fun of it or tear it apart, especially since your commentary can be taken as a hurtful opinion towards the audience for whom the book was really intended. In the end, hype isn't something authors should chase. While it feels good to be popular, and generate sales, reaching the kind of popularity not seen since Harry Potter can be a double-edged sword, especially if your main goal as a writer was to be entertaining rather than clever, a goal which is valid. I don't need every writer to be Shakespeare, and I don't expect every book to be on par with Harry Potter. But when a book is talked up like this, that's exactly what people expect. When a writer reaches the level of popularity Rebecca Yarros has, they're also opened up to the ugly sides of fame. There's nothing wrong with giving a book a bad review or saying you don't like something. This is fair and can happen even when you are in the target demographic. However, when something is hyped, it charges people's emotions. This means that they have higher expectations, which also means they end up disappointed. Worse, if people are disappointed enough, they can become mean, particularly if they are outside the target audience, as even the elements that were appealing to the intended recipients can be off-putting to those looking for something different. The romantic lead of Fourth Wing might be a dreamboat, but a 30-year-old male picking up this book after a lifetime of Tolkien adoration will find the handsome and angsty trope stupid, because it's not there for him. This leads to more than constructive criticism, as people exposed to tastes that aren't their own are going to be annoyed by default. This is where critique crosses the line into cruelty, with those who would never read the book normally ripping into the work with abandon for no appreciation for what the author was trying to do or who she was doing it for. Acting like the book was somehow written just to annoy them, such reviewers can become hateful, even attacking authors on a personal level. Disgusting things have been written about Meyer, with some going so far as to question her taste in men or her worry about her mental health, and love or hate Twilight. Such opinions of anyone are uncalled for. Yet this is the price of hype, because hype means reaching people beyond your target audience, including those eager to tear apart anything that doesn't cater specifically to them. In the end, hype means being made fun of at best and receiving death threats at worst, and regardless of how I end up feeling about the books, I don't want to see Yarros deal with the kind of bullshit Meyer did. When something becomes big enough, people can feel like they own it. The popularity of something can make people uninhibited when it comes to their discussion of it, almost like it's already passed into the public domain, with respect going out the window in regards to remembering that the author is still a living human being with feelings. I don't need to see any more books by women being dragged through the mud, but this is what hype can open a book up to, and that level of scrutiny isn't something I think any writer wants. I'd be content with reaching my target audience and bringing pleasure to those who want my work. Of course, toxicity isn't limited to those outside of an intended audience. As noted earlier, even those within a target audience can be disappointed, and people who are disappointed can be emotional, leading them to critique in a way that's more hurtful than constructive. Within fandoms themselves, particularly when they grow large enough, poisonous patterns can emerge, and it's not uncommon for readers to tear each other down if they don't live up to a specific expectation or decide to read a book that the majority has deemed trashy. Whether it's a controversy, a tendency to only read popular books, or values like capitalism or competition being taken too far, the communities on BookTube or BookTok can do more harm than good, especially when a creator or book reaches a particular level of fame. If you want to hear more of my thoughts on what's wrong with the bookish community, click the video on the left. Thank you for watching and happy reading!